another little bit. Okay, welcome to the description of the compassionate listener. We're going to just do a quick once over on the basic guidelines of the compassionate listener. And what we're doing in this description is I want to just share with everybody the basics of the classes we're going to be teaching and kind of the outline, the concept of compassionate listener. With the compassionate listener, we know there's a lot going on in the world, a lot of not good things. And what we want to do is we want to prepare for things as they're unfolding, as the news is unfolded, and people are learning things. We're going to learn a little more about the death situation as the death toll goes up, as the catastrophes go up. We are really preparing ourselves mentally and emotionally as a survivor of what's going on to be able to be a compassionate listener to those that are in need. There's going to be a lot of people scared. There's going to be a lot of people that need someone to talk to, and they're going to need people like us to be able to speak to. So the compassionate listener is purposely being put together to be put out to society, be put out to the world, to help prepare us as lay people to be compassionate listeners. And I thank my angels, I think my Heavenly Father, I think my grandmothers, and my mother, and all the feminine influence that I've received through the multiple generations in order to hold that femininity even in this world. And I thank my fathers and my grandfathers for all their influence on how to be a strong provider and understanding the masculine roles in society. And as we go through this process, I'm taking on some of both. And I just feel it's time that this news can be shared so we can help support each other, no matter male, female, it doesn't matter. Support each other through what's happening and being prepared. So this is about being a compassionate listener, and that when someone comes to you in crisis, being able to have the tools with you to help support them. And they're going to be different things that we cover, but I'm going to just go over the outline of what it is. Each one of these topics will have its own video with a lot more details, some tools, and some questions at the end of it. And for those interested in going through the whole process and receiving a certificate for a compassionate listener, also being able then to continue through other education as it's unfolded. This is, if it's a single class you're looking for, then that's great, enjoy. But I know through the world that I've lived in, I've wanted to understand many, many topics. I've never had a metaphysical education where I can go to and pick and choose what I want. So I'm hoping that Soul Solutions can do that for everybody, but specifically the compassionate listener is for being able to be open and compassionate to listen to people that are in pain and in crisis. So that being said, the topics that we're going to be covering as we go through this process are, first and foremost, is understanding the different beliefs and dimensions. Okay, so different beliefs cover a lot of different topics, but if you were raised during the Depression, your belief system is going to be very different than if you've been raised in the 80s or the 2000s. Your the part of the world that you're in, depending on what the cultural beliefs are, depending on what religious beliefs you've had growing up, even as far as what order you were when you were born, the astrology signs. There's just so much differences in belief of languages. But I also want to express that in the belief of languages, there are the people who are religious and can only hear from the word Christian. If you're not a Christian, they can't talk to you. There are people that can only use the words of Jesus Christ. And if you don't use those words, they can't hear you. There are people who are scientifically based and their backgrounds are, in scientific communication, so they can't hear this word spirituality. There are atheists that don't believe in any of it. There are some people that will say, if you use the word God, I'm not going to listen to you. I only believe in the white light. So no matter what language someone speaks, we know that through this compassionate listener program, we can still disseminate the information with them. We can still validate them. We can still listen to them, no matter what their understanding is, no matter what their language is. So whether it's atheist, scientific, God only, white light, it doesn't matter what they call the energy, as long as we can validate their feelings. That's a big piece. And the other big piece of this, which I think that us as people wanting to help, we need to understand there are people who are woke that are going to be in terrible disbelief. They're not going to agree. They're the ones that are probably going to have a lot more struggles, or a lot more suicides, a lot more anger. And then, so that's one whole group there, which comprises about 30% of all people alive. There's the group that are awakening, like they know something's wrong, but they don't know what's wrong. So what they do is they question a lot, they step back not believing, but then they ask another question. They're in that stage of awakening. And then that's its whole cultural thing there. And then there's the stage of awake, which, and again, the awakening group is about, the 30-something percentage. And then we have the awake that are also at the 30-something percentage. So we're kind of like on this 30% scale-ish for each one. But the awakening people are the one we're really looking at and trying to support and address a lot. Those of us that are awake, we don't know everything. I don't know everything about every topic. I don't know everything about aliens or UFOs. I don't know everything about, I do know a lot about the cabal and then, the earth and things like that. But my focus is on health and healing and energy medicine. So when the awake people are working with the awakening people, is great because they can ask questions. And even though they may not believe everything, they're willing to talk to you. But the people that are woke, that are angry, think that us awake people are crazy, don't want to have anything to do with this stuff. Those are a little bit more challenging, but with the right tools, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they're woke, awakening, or awake. We can still help them because a crisis is a crisis. And no matter how awake we are sometimes, when we go into this crisis and we have a lot of pain about us, we're going to reach back to, say, our norm, our average, our go-to energy. And for some of us, though we're awake, some of that go-to energy being triggered is going to take us back to a younger time in our life, and we're going to have some negative emotions around that, include panic and fear. So understanding someone's language and the dimension that they're talking about, where are they on the scale of awoke, awakening, and awake. So that's a really important thing. That's going to be one of the first programs we talk about. The second program we're going to focus on is going to be breath techniques and mini meditations, MINI meditation. And the reason that this is important is because in this chaotic world, the disorganization that's out there, the purposeful fear mongering and fear porn that's out there, it's important for us to stay centered and based. Because the longer we go in between our little mini meditations and breathing sessions and calming ourselves, the higher chance we have to be involved in that chaos and fall for the fear. So it's important to just kind of learn, a bunch of little techniques to get us through those in-between moments. The next one that we're going to learn about, and is Don Miguel Ruiz. Life-changing information is the 4 agreements. I'm going to teach the basic concepts of the 4 agreements and encourage anybody who's interested to go and buy the book. So when we're talking about the 4 agreements, we're going to talk about being impeccable with your word. We all need to strive to do that. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect and impeccable with their word. We, say something about ourselves, or we look at somebody and make a comment. That's not being impeccable with your word. Or sometimes we'll make an assumption, somebody looked at me funny, they don't like me. And it may not be true, we need to make sure that we're not making assumptions with people. And, there was always about doing your best. You got just, if you do your best, then you've done your best. And you can't judge yourself or beat yourself up or be impeccable with your word and negative on yourself if you're doing your best. So we're going to go through a program for that. We're also going to be looking at self-love for all ages. It's imperative that we love ourselves. Now, I don't mean an egoic, I'm great way, though there are some teachers that will teach you that. I'm saying with self-love, it's understanding, who am I? What qualities do I have that I can offer into the world? Where is my specialty? Where is my passion? How can I own the goodness that I have? And being able to really love yourself, finding your qualities. And so we have some tools and techniques that we're going to help you remember who you are and the love that you are. Because when you can hold that self-love in your heart, that vibration, that helps you maintain that peaceful feeling and release a lot of the chaos. So that's an important one we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what is spirituality. And why is that the word of the day? For so many years we weren't allowed to talk of it. I was born in the 70s, or I wasn't born. I was born in the I was a teenager in the 70s, put it that way. I was a teenager in the 70s about, make love, not war, being able to understand all this energetic stuff. And even as a teenager, I understood there was something bigger than me outside there that I could hang on to, but I didn't know what to call it. And whether I went to the Mormon church, the Baptist church, the Pentecostal church, or talked to the Catholics, everybody had different versions of what the word spirituality meant. And some of them weren't even positive. So it's important to understand spirituality. How are we connected to the universal divine light? How are we all connected to each other? How are we all one? So that's going to be a class, what is spirituality in its own. Understanding the emotional scale. I think when we begin to understand our thoughts create emotions, and those emotions create behaviors, and we look at that and say, well, wait a minute, I don't like acting that way. How come I'm acting that way? Well, it's because my feelings are hurt. Well, why are my feelings hurt? So we go back into the emotional scale, we'll realize we have the ability to change our mood and our feelings if we decide we want to. There are times I've been sitting in anger and I let myself sit in anger because it feels good. I'm righted. I'm right. That person's wrong. I want to sit in this anger. And there are times I go, okay, enough of that, Barb. You don't need to be angry. It's much more fun being happy. It's much more fun letting go and not holding any grudges on anybody. So understanding the emotional scale, everything from love and passion, all the way down to fear and shame and the lower vibrations, understanding what those vibrations are, how they work on a vibrational scale, and how we can go up the scale. That's important, obviously, as a compassionate listener, to help with somebody if they want to raise in their vibration, but it's important for you to understand as a compassionate listener, how do I use vibrational medicine? How do I understand the emotional scale to keep my vibration up, keep me happy and healthy? Because when you're happier and your vibration's up, you stay healthier. That's huge, especially in what we're going through in the world. And then the sympathy, empathy, and compassion. To me, this is a vital piece of understanding compartments of vibration. So the compartment of vibration, sympathy. For decades, I have gotten so annoyed going into a store and seeing sympathy cards. I'm frustrated because sympathy is a pity party. Sympathy is saying, oh, you poor little thing. Oh, it must be so hard for you. It's taking a code of energy and putting it over somebody who's already in pain to justify their pain. And it's like saying, yes, you are. It's so sad. That is helping them play the victim. And our role is not, nobody's a victim here. We all have to take responsibility. Yes, there are those few moments after someone's passed and people need to vent. And that's what we're teaching, letting people vent safely, but then not putting a sympathy on top of that, putting empathy on top of that, putting compassion on top of that. So we're going to learn the difference between sympathy, empathy, and compassion, and being able to use those appropriately in the right situation, because empaths are awesome. Majority of all the people I know are empaths. We're here to make a difference in the world. We want to save the world. We want to do all that. But we want to ensure that we're using the white light. We're using the universal light. We're using the energy to come down through us. We're pulling it down through us and putting that energy out. We pull the energy in, breathe it into our heart, loving it, and then pushing it out to the person who needs it. we're not meant to take on another person's suffrage. And that's one of the things we want to make sure we're understanding. We're not taking on suffrage. We're using the white light of compassion in our heart and putting the love to them. It's just like when somebody is learning Reiki, and they come to me at one point, or another teacher has taught them, and they come and they ask me a question. Oh, Reiki's not good for me because every time I do Reiki, I'm so tired after I do Reiki. Then I have to say to them, then you're not doing it right. Because when you're pulling of the energy of the white light and putting that through and out, you don't pull of yourself. You don't drain yourself. We need to use the compassion of the universal light, the God energy, the higher source. That's the energy that we're using, pulling in and pushing back out to another person. So it's important to be an empath. It's important to feel, but it's important that we don't take on suffrage of others. So that's going to be a really beautiful class that we do. Healthy boundaries is another one. We want to make sure as we're assisting that person that we are protecting ourselves, that we're keeping our boundaries up to what we will share and what we won't share. There's such thing as too much intimacy when you're in a state of crisis with someone in bonding. We want to make sure that, if there's different types of abuse or misunderstanding, that we make sure we put a little bit of a boundary up there, and we're not overly giving of ourselves, because we're here to serve a lot of people. And if there's one person sucking us dry and we're leaving and feeling just completely energetically devoured, then we're not going to be able to help anybody else. So we need to learn how to use those healthy boundaries. Another class that we're going to be having is called Staying Calm in Crisis. This again is going back to some of the meditation techniques. This is going in and also being understanding the difference between the sympathy, empathy, and compassion. But it's staying calm in crisis is about listening and letting them validate, letting them talk, letting them empty their language out, letting them feel heard. And then after they're heard, sometimes when you're a counselor or in this case, a compassionate listener, sometimes when you're with someone and you're in this intimate information coming back and forth, sometimes there can be the coach or the counselor or the compassionate listener may have a trigger. They may get triggered by something somebody says. Now we know we're not taking it personal. Okay. It's not our responsibility. We're not taking it personal. We know that. But in that moment, as we feel triggered inside of us, there may be something we need to address, but we don't need to address it now. We can address it later when we're not with this person, not with the experiencer of this information. So what we need to do is be able to say, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to stay calm in this crisis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my stuff aside. I'm going to breathe in the white energetic light again. I'm going to reset myself, because when I stay calm, the person I'm with can stay calm. We can influence them in calmness. And if I let that chaos of my trigger begin to affect me, it's going to affect my listening to the person, the experiencer of who's trying to unload on me. So it's really important to be able, and I've done this before when I've been counseling, someone will say something and I'll go, like, I feel the little trigger in here. I'm calm on the outside, but I feel the trigger. As soon as I feel the trigger, I'm like, nope, let's put you aside. If you want to talk about that later, we can. And I release that, because I am not here to talk about the Barb show. I'm not here to say, oh, I know all this stuff in my brain, or I've experienced that too. Oh, let me tell you my time. No, that's not why we're here. So when we breathe in that white, energetic, loving energy, and we bring it back down into our bodies, and we release that energy and take a deep breath, our mind clears, our heart opens back up, and it stays focused on the person that we're working with and the person we're trying to help. So it's important to stay calm in a crisis. And last but not least is we want to talk about the order of energy health. So we're energetic beings. We're full of love and life and energy. And in order to be a good, compassionate listener for those people that are going to come to us, the experiencer of the difficulty, we need to be able to ensure that we're healthy and we're in a good place to help them. So and if you ever heard the saying, do as I say, not as I do. Well, in case of emergency, sure. But it's important to really live the life that you talk about. It's really important to be the best you can be. And there's no judgment here, but it's important for the compassionate listener to stay healthy. So when they're talking to the experiencer, that the experiencer feels they're talking to someone that knows what they're talking about. They're sharing with someone they think that they feel that they know what they're talking about. So we're going to talk about the quality of your breath and breathing, the quality of your water. How often are you drinking enough? Because staying hydrated is something important for your human body and your spirit. We're going to talk about nutrition. And I don't care if you're a vegan or a meat eater. It just, none of that makes a difference. But are you doing what your body is craving and calling you for its natural of what it needs? These are important things. So we'll cover 7 topics on the order of energy health. And I'm not going to go through everything right now, but it's important to understand this series is to help every human being get started with being able to hear a person who's going through bad experience, that's lost someone. They need someone to hear them and validate them. This isn't about physically emotional support. This is about mental, energetic support so that person can be heard. And, we can talk about that in boundaries and body language. And so the series will start with 10 classes. If you feel compelled to be a compassionate listener and you want to get a certification, if you want to, get a certificate of completion saying you've done that, those first 10 classes are at no cost, and they're free. And after those 10 classes, if you become a certified compassionate listener and you're going to go on with it, your classes will also be at no cost. As long as you're out there supporting the world, we're going to support you. Soul Solutions is about creating solutions for the soul to be able to give out into the world. And this is my way of giving back to everybody who wants to give in a way to help others. And they feel this is the compassion and they feel that this is the way they want to give. So I thank you for your time. If you're interested in being a compassionate listener, I encourage you to register. And I encourage you to start to have a relationship and do some questions back and forth. And the series will start being released probably 2 to 4, probably at least 2 classes a week for the next 5 weeks. And for each person that comes and logs on, answers the questions and comes back at the end of the 5 weeks, then we'll talk about the next series of classes. But for right now, everybody holds that grace of being here as the world turns and as things may not always be happy and powerful. We all hold the ability to be the compassionate listener for our brother and sister. So thank you for your time. I look forward to speaking with you again soon, and I look forward to sharing the series with you. Namaste. Namaste, my friends. Namaste.